TLS, that is encrypted connection. This is the first thing we do. After we do this, then we will log in with username and password. To log in with username and password, just use self.server connection. And I believe we have, yeah, login. There we go. A direct function available. And this is where you give your username and password. It's going to log in for your server connection, and it's going to send back a response. Let's take a look at what the response is. They have not, yeah, it may raise some exception in case there is some authentication error, like your username password are not right or something like that. It'll raise an error. In case you don't have any authentication, even then it'll raise an error. So these are some things that it will do. So I'm just going to send whatever is the email and whatever is the password, and I'm going to create a server connection. Done. That's it. After this, whenever we call send mail function, we just need to perform one simple step. Our server connection, sorry, our self.server connection. And remember, for every function that is called self is a compulsory variable that you need to read, because you need to read the object that is calling this function. Since personal mail is going to first call this constructor, and then personal mail is going to call this send email, we need to specify that personal mail is the one calling this and this, so that we get access and info about it completely. So we're just going to call self.server connection, and we're going to send the email. And to send the email, you need to perform some, you just need some basic information, which if you, sorry, not server connection, send mail function, you need the following things. From address, that is our email, to address, to whom are we sending, and the message we are sending. That's it. From address or from address is self.email. That is our sender email that we have. And to address, to mail, we don't have it. So we need to receive it as a part of the function. So let's receive it as to underscore mail, and we'll just also receive it as mail content. We'll just call it as mail content. To make sure that this mail ends here and starts here, to avoid that confusion, you can also write this as mail receiver and mail content to avoid all this confusion. We just send this, and that's pretty much it. With this, your email will be sent. That's all. Now, let's go ahead and let's start this. And yeah, let's see how this works out. So for my purpose, I'm just gonna create a file here called credentials.py, where I'm gonna write password equals the password that I'm gonna use. And I'm not gonna open this file so that, of course, others won't see the password, but we will do one little thing here, that is from, oh yeah, so since this is gonna be here, I'm gonna put credentials also here, and I'm gonna make a new folder here called credentials, and I'm gonna place credentials.py here. So essentially what's gonna happen here is when I run email.py, I'll go to credentials and I'll import, sorry, from credentials.credentials. Credentials is the directory. Within this, I'll import credentials.py, and with that credentials.py, I'll import the variable that it's gonna have, which is gonna be password. And whatever will be the password here, that is what I will send here. Because I'll be sharing this rest of the code with you, I just want to make sure that it becomes clear that this one thing is going to be hidden, but the rest of the code you will still be able to see and view for our purpose. Now, Please take a look at this. Please let me know if you have any queries so far. If you have any questions still here, if there are any questions, I'll take them up and we will move ahead from there. All right. So no particular queries, which means we can go ahead. All right. So yeah, in that case, let's move ahead right away and continue with the next part. So the next part I'm just going to do here is I'll just stop sharing the screen for a few seconds while I set up the password. Uh, so meanwhile, if you want to have a track of this code and work around it by yourself, I'm just going to share this here for reference so that you can take a look at it until then and work around it. And you can try it with your own um, email and password for your reference. All right, there we go. So please wait for just a few seconds while I copy the password, save it, and close the file so we can begin. All right, so I think we are good to go ahead. Right, so with that done, let me just share my screen again. Right. So let's get back to this. So here's what we have. Now, please take a few seconds if you want. If there are any queries, please let me know. Please feel free to let me know. If there are no queries, we'll move ahead to the next part right away without any delay. All right. So no queries. That's pretty awesome. All right. So let's go ahead. Now, um, I just have to write, let's say personal email dot send email. Now that we have created the personal email object, we just have to send email. Now, please note, I have not done any exception handling at all. So any exception that occurs, it will crash our program. I'm not looking to add exception handling. I'm not looking to spend extra time on that, given we have learned enough about it. My main purpose right now is only to perform this basic operation. Everything else, let's just skip it entirely for now. And we will implement this within our TTS application if we find time, or we'll implement other things at least within our TTS application and make it bigger and bigger, make that application even larger over time. But let's get back to this. In sending email, I need to specify the mail receiver. I'm gonna send the mail to myself for now for reference. And the mail content is gonna be a string, let's say hello, sending via code. Because I'm excited about sending through code. Now, let's see if we face any exception, what happens, how do we work around it? Now, remember, this is just a simple message, simple mail content. An actual mail content is going to have subject, body, signature, all those things. There's a different way to send it. So we'll just see if this works. If this doesn't work, we'll send it through the other way around. So let's run it. Let's see what happened. Um, Partially initialized module SMTP library has no attribute called SMTP, uh, possibly due to circular inputs. All right, let's see why this is an issue. I have, okay, this becomes an issue if I have used SMTP in uppercase anywhere at my end, but I have not. So apparently this might be something that is an error that it comes down to SMTP library itself. So let's just take a look at that. Often Stack Overflow helps us out as developers, so we know that. Um, so yeah, let's take a look at this. So I have saved as a .py file that should not be there. So apparently, yeah, as I pointed out, we don't have a file called smtp.py. So it should not be an issue on at our end at least. That's why I'm checking this out and trying to figure this out. Let's just see if we can resolve this. Oh, it's looking for email.py apparently. All right, so this is the reason. We don't have anything called smtp.py, but our file name is email.py. So apparently it should not be any of these file names because it uses all these packages internally. So remember, I've told at the beginning that you should never name your file as a class that you're going to have. So it internally uses these classes, so we should not name this here as email.py. So I'm just going to call this as email example.py. Let's just change it and let's run this. Now, once you've run it, um, okay, apparently there's some error. It says username and password are not accepted. Let's see why is that. So it's particularly in this line when I send this username and whatever password I send, it goes to the self-authentication and it says username and password are not accepted. Um, and it's giving us a link. Let's see what exactly this link says. Okay, bad credentials. So, okay, let me see if it is a bad credential. Okay, apparently the password I have used is not mine. Okay, so um, okay, maybe I might have changed it as of late. So I'm just going to use another temporary email that I have instead of this, just for our reference. So I'm just going to again stop sharing the screen so that we do that. Again, as I just pointed out, this is not something I expected to happen. So yeah, please bear with that. Apologies for that in advance. Right, please wait for just a few seconds. Kindly await. All right, I think I realized what is the reason for this. The reason for this is we should not use our Gmail password. We should use something called an app password instead. So I'm just gonna share this link across. So it should not be a Gmail password, it should be an app password. But this is the logic. What I can do instead is set up this app password possibly for after the break so that we don't spend too much time on this, if that is fine with you all. Because that requires a two-factor authentication and setting up an app password that your app can use. That's what we need to do. So just for your reference, we are not supposed to use our Gmail passwords. We're instead supposed to use an app password. So we need to create an app password through two-step verification. And then once that is generated, that is the one that we need to use. So I'm just going to share this for reference. In interest of time, we can either skip this as a basic example, and I can set this up after the or during the break so it doesn't take up any further amount of time. Would that be fine with you all? So we can
Sounds
go
good.
through further. All right, thank you. So just want to make sure our session is not interrupted by issues such as these. So prior to this, we used to use password, which I believe has changed a while ago. So yeah, please bear with that. Apologies for that again. Right. Anyway, let's move ahead back to the whole logic of object-oriented programming. We'll remember this. We'll get back to this particular example ahead. All right. So moving ahead from this, let's go on to the next part prior to this. Right. So this is just the basic idea of performing object-oriented programming. There are a lot of things that we can do in detail about this, such as utilizing object-oriented programming to make sure that you perform inheritance and let's say utilizing this to perform a lot of internal Python operations and so on. That's one thing that we will. Yes, Jenny, you can please unmute and speak. That should not be an issue. Please go ahead.
Hi, I was wondering if we want to send email to Hanover email box, do we also
Uh,
need to come up with a app password for Hanover email box?
okay, that's one thing I would need to check upon. Generally, the idea is it depends on this SMTP server. It purely depends on the SMTP server. That is, the SMTP server of Gmail does not allow us to do it directly through Gmail password. However, whatever is the SMTP server for your specific email, for example, you might be or your organization might be using Outlook, for instance, or Outlook of Microsoft, or your organization might be using Gmail itself, but
We do
the
Outlook.
layout, okay, okay, it's Outlook. Right. So
Yeah,
let me just cross verify that because it's very rare that we actually use these out with Outlook and so on. So I'll just cross verify that. For professional purposes, again, this is the reason why I struggled with the Gmail part initially. That's because for professional purposes, we use SendGrid. This is the one we use for um, every production grade applications because it can send hundreds and thousands of emails without any issues. So for Outlook, let me just check. So you can see Outlook has its own SMTP server name and port and all of these. So whenever we go for Outlook SMTP email password, yeah, it seems to be Outlook email address and Outlook password itself. That's what it states here. I'm trying to see if I can find a direct Microsoft link by any chance, but I'm unable to directly find that here. But yeah, additional links should be fairly good enough to work around. So it seems to be Outlook email address and Outlook password, according to this. Of course, that can be tried. However, if you do face issues, we can check it around. I'll also do a little check on that and will update.
Okay, thank you.
Right. We will be. Oh, yeah, there we go. Here's your response. Yeah, it refers to the email address password itself, according to this as well. So this is from Microsoft itself. So yeah, this should be fairly simple and easy enough to work around. So yeah, but since you have Outlook through Hanover, your email would be something different. Your SMTP server host would be something different. I think some folks from your NetOps or so on within your organization might help around identifying that so that you can automate your emails as well. That's one thing you can do.
Okay,
Yeah,
we just need to find our own port.
yeah, the host and the port, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Right, thank you. Right, moving ahead from that, let's go on. Again, we'll get back to this in a while, so please bear with that. Instead, I'm just going to go to a new file to begin with, and we'll just try to learn a few object-oriented programming concepts that we're going to use ahead fairly quickly without spending too much time on it, because we have a lot of things to work around and learn. We'll try to do all of that. But prior to that, let's just go ahead with this. Now, since we know the basic idea of classes and objects and how we can use them. You can create tens of different objects, and each object, the moment you create it, all these operations will be done prior. So when you send email, only this email send function will be performed, which makes it much, much easier. You can also close the email connection, perform like check your latest emails. A lot of different functions can be done, and you can write your own code like check my last email and perform text to speech and read it out to me. A lot of different things just for our understanding, but yeah, that's just something that you can think of. Moving ahead from this, whenever you want to learn object oriented programming, one simple thing I'm just going to point out: I will not go in depth about inheritance and polymorphism within this. Just so you know, if you'd like to, I will definitely do that, but I will not go quite in depth within it. I will only touch upon it at a surface level because this is something you can easily learn from various websites and various tutorials. What I want to focus on is something about object-oriented programming that we do not learn from various places and various websites and so on. Some practices that developers should know but never end up learning and knowing. That is solid principles. Um, Solid principles, when it comes down to object oriented programming, is like a basic guideline that a good developer should always follow. So that's exactly what I'm going to start with. I'm just going to create a new file called 02 solid principles.py. Let's just call it as 01. Right. Now, if you feel these are getting too deep or too logical or too complicated by any chance, please feel free to let me know so we can definitely walk through them and work around it. We will be able to do that. So that's one thing that we just need to know. Now, with this idea, let's move on to the next part of this. Now, in our current case scenario, in our um, logic, whatever we have learned so far, we have just learned how to create classes and how to create objects within classes. However, one important thing that we need to know within object-oriented programming in every way is solid principles, without which learning object-oriented programming is as simple as saying, I know Python, but I don't know how to make really good programs. So that's the whole idea. That's the whole logic or purpose of it when we talk about it. That's what we need to know. Now, moving ahead with that, let's go on to the next part of it. Within solid principles, here's what we need to know. Okay, let me write them down so we are. And this is what S stands for within solid principles to begin with. Now, in solid principles, S basically stands for single responsibility principle. The whole idea is that each class should only have one responsibility. When you create object-oriented programming, or when you utilize object-oriented programming in real-world applications, the idea is that you're going to have a lot of classes. Like, let's say we just created a class called email or mail. Apart from this mail, you might have a lot other classes as well. You might have a huge amount of classes ahead as well. Now, you should not add other things. You should never add other logic and other things within this class called mail. For example, when you have email, you should not add a TTS function within mail just for it to read your email. You should not do that. TTS should be a part of a separate class called NLP, Natural Language Processing, for example, which should have a TTS function because TTS is not a part of email, it is a part of NLP. So whenever somebody imports mail, whenever somebody uses mail for some purpose, and whenever somebody uses a class called NLP for some purpose, if somebody wants to use TTS, they should not import mail. They should import NLP to use TTS. Another reason why I'm saying this is assume you have a class called file reader or file read and write operation and everything. So whenever you have, let's say, file reader or file writer function, it should only have one certain functions. If there's a class called file reader, it should have a function called reading files alone. If there's a class called file writer, it should only have functions to write files in different ways. Write binary file, write text file, and so on. So here is read binary file, read text file, and so on. So whenever you want to write a file, use object of file writer class. When you want to read a file, use file reader class. Just because file reader deals with files, don't just start writing the file writer application here as well. There are a lot of real world examples that you get to see, which will help you work through, walk through, and understand them. That's something we just need to know in prior, right? So something that we need to figure out. If you go online, you will see a lot of examples like solid principles. There's a really good example with the coffee example. I think I'm sure I'll be able to find out somewhere. This is going to be a larger example, which is why I'm not going to write these examples. This is going to be more lengthier and complicated the more we go through it. So I'm not going to write this. However, I will specify this to ensure that, or I will walk through this to ensure that you get to understand this and you get to work around this the way it's supposed to be. So yeah, let us start with that. Now, first things first, in our current case, when we talk about solid principles, single responsibility principle is that each class should only do one uh, operation. Each class should only do one process or one purpose. It should not do more than one task. So if you have, let's say, as they provide an example, a basic coffee app or coffee machine, its purpose is only to perform what it's supposed to perform. It should not do other things. So they do a really good task of adding additional things within this coffee app and making sure that they follow solid principles within this. So there's this really good website, but I am not able to recall which website has done it. So I'm just going to walk through a couple of examples to see if I can find it. If I can find it, I'll be sharing the same so that yeah, D zone, I believe, might be the one. So I'll just try to share that so you can take a look at it later on. I will only walk through it in short within a few minutes alone so that I don't take too much time within it. So these are for different examples. Again, there are going to be a lot of different examples, but yeah, if you want to take a look at them, you can.